So once again, good morning, everyone. Frankly speaking, this is not a topic that one is really looking forward to speak on. It's something where one is here more for listening and learning. It's very difficult for people like us who are generalists to talk on very specialized topics. So what I have here is something which is very basic and preliminary, simple, especially for people who are not initiated into this domain, give them a general feel of what the issues possibly are from the perspective, especially from the perspective of government. And as regard ROI for government sector, about a year back when we in Kerala started looking at doing cloud computing, very naively I suggested to my team of people who I were to depend on doing this cloud was to let us do an ROI and see, there are a lot of things, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, private cloud, public cloud. Why don't you tell me which of this is best? I will do, let's do that particular thing which is the best. And of course, I'm still waiting for an answer. So I wish being able to say to work out an ROI at this stage, when ROI even for normal governance applications or normal IT applications itself tends to be very complex. On this evolving area, to be talking of ROI is a very challenging task, and I would look forward for comments from our esteemed panelists here to understand and learn how one should go about doing it. Possibly one thing which is slightly better known is what are the things which indicates to a positive ROI and benefits for using cloud. So very briefly, this is what the cloud helps you to do. You have your services, your storage, your network, your operating systems. Create a cloud middleware, create a cloud infrastructure, which thereby enables you to make this facilities or resources for other users who could be individuals, organizations, and corporations, and then thereby provision any of these resources for the need. We have all heard this and we all believe this, and that is why we pursue this so aggressively. Everyone, Gartner says that by 2012, which is not very far off, most of the IT services industry in India would be catering to the cloud demand, domestic cloud demand. And so we do look for, we expect there will be, intuitively and anecdotally, we can see that there will be savings in terms of increased efficiencies because of the use of cloud, better infrastructure utilization. We all know of how much the data centers that we have created in the government, my colleagues from the government would bear with me, they're hardly utilized. And one is able to provide on-demand provisioning of resources, which I mentioned earlier, which itself leads to savings of various natures, both tangible as well as intangible. There is a huge cost saving. In government, we find it very difficult to really correctly predict and provide for the hardware and software requirements. So you either underprovide or overprovide. Very often overprovide. If there are funds, you overprovide invariably. So you can say, if you were to go on a cloud, you don't have to overprovide. You can actually increase your requirement based on your actual usage. Greater agility, response. We all talk service delivery, but as managers of IT infrastructure and as people responsible to be able to provide IT services to customers, if you are a government department, your customers may be other government departments or organizations, you are much more agile to be able to provide IT resources. But while there are these obvious advantages which has led to this great interest in cloud, there are obviously some concerns, security being one of them. Obviously, you are working on various servers which you don't directly control, and you are not sure exactly of the nature of security, or we are not fully sure of all the kind of security concerns that may come. Performance and availability may depend on the resources that are part of the cloud, which may be in-house or remote. Legal and regulatory concerns are very much there. People keep asking whose liability, and the law needs to evolve, the rules needs to evolve in this direction. When you're working on cloud, is it really the responsibility of the cloud provider, or is it the responsibility of the server owner, or whose responsibility is it to really be responsible for the nature of instances that may take place? Largely, we are talking of on-demand provisioning, but what about if there is undue usage and runaway usage of any particular resource? So this is IDC Enterprise Panel did a study sometime back in 2008, and some of the concerns which they talked about while using cloud infrastructure. Security obviously topped all of them. Performance, availability, hard to integrate, and this is something which is a big challenge in the government, because a lot of our applications which have been developed in-house are not compatible for integration with cloud infrastructure. And the rest of it, I don't need to. Capacity to be able to integrate cloud also becomes a challenge when we are specifically talking of the government sector. Let us now quickly look at what are some of the main functions which immediately invite very great attention with respect to usage on the cloud. One, of course, is development and testing, which when you are still in the development stage, why really go and invest on a huge amount of infrastructure, whether hardware or software, when you can actually borrow it or hire it on cloud. Similarly, you could do functional offloading. You don't really have to think of offloading the whole the whole application per se, but certain parts of the application which you think have lesser security concerns, which are not so critical. You could look at possibility of offloading those. Addressing peaks and spikes, this is a huge challenge, but then a lot of government work invariably, and I guess most organizational work is of the nature where we do look at sudden peaks, and how do you meet those peaks? Do you provide for the maximum peak load, or do you provide for average? Cloud could be a good way to address this. This is, of course, challenging to actually implement. And large number of web services, I'll come back, but web services typically require a huge amount of scalability and elasticity. If you were to look at the typical Rogers diffusion chart, I mean, there is a sudden escalation of adoption of any service. And when that escalation takes place, the ability of organization to scale up quickly is best provided in cloud, and such applications possibly can easily migrate or can be used on cloud. So what are the basic options that we look at? And if we were to look at ROI, we possibly need to look at the combination or matrix of all these variants to see which of the variant in which context has the best ROI. A particular application or particular usage may not have a positive ROI with a different kind of, what I mean to say, infrastructure as a service may not possibly have a positive ROI in a public domain, but may have a positive ROI if we were to look at a private cloud. So looking at the matrix of combinations, we really need to look if there is an ROI which is positive and attractive enough to take up the project. I also have listed out some of the things which possibly to mind at this stage at a very, very high level. I mean, if we were to go into specifics, we need to be more minute and look at much more specifics on these things. But typically it looks at, if we were using a public cloud, we could look at things like Government 2.0, which would involve greater community participation. There is the talk of, in Kerala we have started something called School Wiki, where all the school students, high school students today, have created a wiki in local language, and they contribute content onto that. Now, something like this could be, I don't see why cannot be on a public cloud. It's content created by students about their school, and similar such initiatives of community participation would be a good example for a public cloud. Private cloud, of course, most of the government work we do, we are very sensitive about data. We are responsible for data. I mean, government's word is treated as, whether it's a high school certificate, a person's caste, date of birth, everything is dependent on that. You can't have the data compromised. So there's a huge premium on data correctness and integrity, and those kind of things may possibly need to be on a private cloud. And of course, hybrid. We could obviously look at combination of these two. Infrastructure as a service, most of the e-governance applications per se